But I think we'll go ahead and get started here today and welcome back to the stage Dr. Alice Emery, who's going to talk with us about mindfulness and the science of happiness. Just a wonderful theme, and it really relates to the wellness that we all need to be practicing and to be a part of. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Alice. Thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you. This is a lecture that I didn't really intend to make part of my traditional lecture series, but it's kind of grown on me. I started out doing a piece about meditation, and then got interested in lifestyle medicine. And looking into lifestyle medicine, there's more to promoting wellness than just encouraging meditation. There are a lot of different modalities that we can employ to improve the overall wellness of ourselves and our families and our patients. So I'm Alice Emery. I'm from Hospice of Holland. I work here in Grand Rapids and in Holland doing palliative care and hospice. So if we talk about the science of happiness or mindfulness, the first question that I think comes to mind is why? Why do we even need to talk about this? And perhaps a lot of you realize that there's a lot of unhappiness in the modern world. Greater than 1/6 of Americans are taking a psychiatric prescribed medication, mostly antidepressants, but other things for anxiety as well. And there are a lot of correlates between opioid addiction and general unhappiness, lack of connection, etc. So if you research into why people are unhappy, there are a lot of reasons, and some of them can be ameliorated and some can't. Why do we even need to talk about happiness? It's because of what's going on in our society. And is it the doctor's business to help patients be happy? I believe it is, because it's part of being healthy. So I think that your body plays into your mental state and your emotional state, and the part that we can modify, I think, is part of our business as doctors. And of course, it's important to take care of ourselves as well. So we have to function well to be good at what we do. When we're going into a patient's room to talk about sensitive topics, we need to be centered and settled ourselves. You don't realize how much of your behavior is state dependent. If you're in a rush and you've got 16 things to go do, and you come in to talk to the patient and you think it's going to take 5 minutes, and they try to open up to you, if you are not in that mental state, the framework to be able to open up, then they're just going to feel shut down. And I think patients are very sensitive to your presence or the absence of your attention when you're trying to discuss sensitive topics. And pretty much every topic is a sensitive topic to patients, because it's all about them and their health and their own integrity and their future. And so these things require us to be centered, and to know how to center yourself, I think is a very important skill. I remember we had a talk once at Grand Rounds about palliative care, and one of the palliative care physicians said, before I go into every room, I stop and take several deep breaths. And I thought, well, that's a funny thing to say at Grand Rounds, because Grand Rounds is usually not about...
Pretty academic.
Yeah, it's not about the internal experience of being a doctor. And so, but, that's the palliative care physician for you, is that they are willing to talk about the internal experience as well as the external behaviors of being a doctor. And I think that was a really good piece of advice. So learning how to center yourself, I think, is super important for our work. Determinants of happiness, a lot of it is uncontrollable, like, childhood trauma, things that happen to you that are in the environment. And genetic factors of happiness are important too. If you look at parents and grandparents and children, there are some genetic factors that can't be changed. But a large chunk of our individual happiness is controllable by your behaviors and by the things you choose to do. So I feel like that's important for us to know, and not feel like, oh, I've always been a sad sack because my whole family is that way. I feel like we should take control of the things that we can to make things better. What is it like to be happy? I suppose all of us remember a time, maybe when we were children, or maybe more recently, when we were just generally happy all the time. Not everybody has that memory of being generally happy. Some people just have a few fleeting moments of happiness, a short lasting sense of elation when you pass the boards, or when something really wonderful happens. But what we're really looking for is this kind of long-term contentment, sort of like the long-acting and short-acting morphine. We don't want just the short-acting, we want the long-acting. And the question is, how do we get there? There's another happy feeling that's called the flow state. At least that's the way it's been termed, when your output or your activity of your mind and your body are so tuned to your level of ability that you lose track of time. Like, if, say, playing music, playing tennis, doing something that really engages you, say a mechanic working on an engine, where they're just at the edge of their ability, and not a bit bored. That's a very happy state, and there's a couple books written about how to get into the flow state and the effects of it on people. Hedonic happiness is that momentary well-being sense of elation, and then eudaimonic is another term that was created by the Greeks. Aristotle came up with it, saying that hedonic happiness is just the sort of vulgar momentary pleasures, but what you really want to go for when you're thinking about your happiness is not the pursuit of short-term happiness, but the pursuit of flourishing. And that is created by a lot of behaviors, such as self-acceptance, working towards mastery, and having a positive connection with others. So mindfulness and the science of happiness, why we need to talk about it is because we want to be happy ourselves. It's important that we function well, and functioning well as physicians involves us being the best we can be. We want happiness for our patients and also for our children. We want everyone around us to live their best lives. So how do we prescribe happiness? How do we share or add to the sense of general well-being that we generally hold? I don't know if all of you guys do any kind of program to try to control or try to manage your mental state. Now, I didn't used to. I had a certain family of patients under my hospice care, and the patients lived longer than expected. So I ended up doing a series of face-to-face visits, a series of visits with them. And the whole family did transcendental meditation, and they were the calmest people in a crisis. It was amazing. And they started working on me, trying to get me to be trained to do transcendental meditation as well. And after about 2 years of her being on hospice, I did go ahead and do that training and learn to meditate, and began meditating every day. And I really have to say that that was something that has made a big difference for me. So I'm a proponent of paying attention to those things that you can change to improve your happiness. I'll talk more about that meditation in a minute.
Good.
Okay, so generally, lifestyle medicine is a kind of a new subspecialty of medicine, a branch of primary care that focuses on health promoting behaviors. Healthy diet, exercise, sleep, reducing toxic environmental exposures, that would be alcohol, tobacco, etc. And then mental health habits that decrease stress. So if you look at there was a study in 2004 called, or a study called Inter-Heart Study, that looked at what are the causes of heart attack or heart disease. And surprising to me, not only high cholesterol and hypertension and things like that, but also stress. Mental stress is actually a trigger for cardiovascular events. And I believe that in the modern world, people do have a lot more general stress carrying over from hour to hour and day to day than we were probably designed to carry. If you look at primitive people like in Papua New Guinea or the Maasai in Africa, you'll find that they do not admit to having a stressed or angsty feeling or depression or suicide in their societies. They have a lot of things that bother them more, like thunderstorms, fleas, parasites, bacterial infections, but they have a lot of things that bother them less. And arthritis, coronary artery disease, lung cancer, depression, anxiety, and suicide are things that they don't have hardly at all. So when we look at living in the modern world, I'd like us to take the pieces from a primitive society that help support mental health and add those to our modern world wherever we can, to our lives, so that we can be our best self, physically and emotionally and mentally. So exercise, of course, in medical school, everyone knows that exercise is good for you. Stretching, strength training, pretty much anything you can do to move your body is helpful. There's an author called Katie Bauman, named Katie Bauman, who wrote Movement Matters, and you can find her at Nutritious Movement. She says basically we've got to, in the modern world, put movement back into our lives, because as we've progressed, we've taken the need for movement out of most everything, because you want to make it easier. You don't want to climb the stairs, you want to take an elevator. And in general, that isn't good for us physically. Sitting in a recliner watching TV is what a lot of elderly people end up doing all day. And that's very bad for your body, not only for your posture, but for your sense of comfort in your spine and your neck and your shoulders. The movement that we've taken out of our lives can be put back in pleasant, enjoyable ways. For example, here's some elderly friends of mine who are going kayaking. I went kayaking with these ladies, and they're still moving and they're still feeling good. There are a lot of people in their generation who are in scooter chairs and mechanical wheelchairs who aren't moving. And it's easy to say that because people stayed active, they did better, and the people who didn't stay active are the ones in the wheelchairs. So I don't want to blame anybody or make people feel judged if they aren't physically strong at any point. But I feel like pushing yourself to stay more active is necessary now, because there's so little movement required in life anymore. John, do you feel that way? Because I know you have a hard time sometimes with climbing stairs. You feel like you have to put movement into your life on purpose?
It's intentional. Yeah, I mean, Lisa and I try to walk on a regular basis. That's kind of our starting point. I've gotten back into golfing, which gets, a lot of body movement.
Mm-hmm.
I take a cart. I'm not going to walk 18
But
holes.
the whole spine twists with golfing. It's very good for you.
I mean, there's some flexibility there, and typically even with the cart, I'll end up about 2 miles
Mm-hmm.
of steps in that process. So yeah, I think that for me, it's had to be very intentional. It used to be just sort of normal, but health issues come up and begin limiting you, and so I live with one lung, and so I am going to get short of breath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just have to learn how to accommodate that and still work within the bounds of what my capabilities are.
Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of studies that show, say, for example, people who walk a dog every day are happier than people who don't, non-walkers, you could say. And part of that is because walking makes you feel happy, but also the pets. Pets are a factor that promotes a sense of connection and well-being. If you just pet a dog, your oxytocin levels go up and your cortisol levels go down. So there are a lot of things that are, choices that you make that improve your general happiness, and being physically active is one of them, for sure. Diet, okay, so We didn't change. Oh, there we
There we
go.
go.
So what is the healthiest diet? When I talk to patients, I ask them, what do you eat? The most common answer is, oh, I eat healthy. And then I ask them, what do you mean by that? And they say, oh, I eat a lot of chicken. And then they kind of trail off, and they're not really sure what's healthy besides chicken versus red meat.
Breaded and fried chicken.
They mean they're trying to reduce their red meat. So everybody is eating a little bit less red meat. But then I say, wait, what about vegetables? And they almost always say, oh, we don't eat vegetables. And I feel like saying, that's what all my palliative care patients have in common. But no, so I think the easiest thing to say when you talk about what's a healthy diet is to just say, eat more fruit, eat more vegetables. So if they don't eat vegetables at all, you might need to, if this seems appropriate, considering what their overall condition is, you might want to talk about that. This is a picture of 2 cauliflower heads roasted like the way you would roast beef. That was a Thanksgiving dinner once, so it was pretty good with mushroom gravy. And then one on the left is making a cake out of fruit with pineapple and watermelon, etc. So it isn't part of our normal culture to eat less meat and more fruit and vegetables, but that is basically what's lacking in the American diet, what we call the SAD diet, the standard American diet. And if you look for what is health promoting, compared to eating fast food, home cooked food of any kind is more health promoting. Compared to eating fast food, home cooked food with a decreased amount of animal products is probably the healthiest diet for longevity. The keto diet has received a lot of attention, but unfortunately it increases cardiovascular events and decreases lifespan. The healthiest diet is a diet that promotes longevity and does not promote cardiovascular disease. You can even reverse cardiovascular disease with a completely plant-based diet, and that's been proven. That's a revolutionary claim. You can reverse hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular coronary artery disease with a completely plant-based diet. Okay, so now another thing besides exercise and diet, which everybody already knows about, I wanted to tell you a few key things that you could advise people about when they're struggling with their emotional health. What do you know about journaling? To me, journaling is something that you do as a kid. You write your diary and that sort of thing. But there's actually good reasons to do journaling, especially when you're going through hard times. There was a study about something called three good things, where they asked participants to write down 3 good things that happened that day, something inspiring, something touching, and by doing so, they found that people's sense of happiness increased so much that most of them continued doing it after the study was over. Gratefulness is a good place to start whenever you're feeling out of sorts. Just writing down a list of things you're grateful for is a good place to begin when you don't know where to begin. Journaling is a great way to write your thoughts out and get them out of your head. There's a whole book called The Way of the Artist's Way, where they talk about writing 2 pages every day in a journal just to get stuff out, to clear your head in a sense. But once you have it on paper, you can read it back and you can look at it and you can evaluate it. So in a sense, it functions similar to having an intimate friend that you can tell everything to. So if you have a patient who's isolated, who's lonely, who doesn't have good intimate friends, journaling is a really great way to work through your thoughts. You can write things out and then you can answer back, what a kind friend would say, or what your best future self would say. And so in a sense, it's a way of putting your thoughts down in a concrete format and then evaluating them. So it's really helpful for people who are struggling emotionally to encourage journaling. Also, the fact that it's a book rather than just scattered pieces of paper. It means that your thoughts and your emotional process is somewhat valuable and a little bit precious to hold on to. So when you write stuff down in the book, it's not the same as writing it on a piece of paper and then losing that paper. You know that that's held there. So it feels very much like telling a friend, because this book will hold this memory for you, and you don't need to hold it anymore. So I feel like journaling is an underused resource that's easily accessible to anyone. Prayers, another thing that we don't talk about much in the medical world, because prayers are kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum of behavior from science in a sense, because as we have increased our feeling of being connected to science, we've decreased that sense of spirituality and superstition that goes along with spirituality. And I feel like that's probably a mistake. Probably the Western world should have allowed for more of a spiritual dimension in life without completely abnegating the spiritual world. Prayers can be very soothing. So people pray the rosary. Have you ever heard of that? There are a lot of maybe Catholics who actually do that still, because it is a calming ritual. So calming rituals are a good thing. And if it helps you to pray, you can get a lot out of it. I personally have a prayer list, which I go through, and it often includes patients. If I feel particularly touched by a patient's situation, I add them to my prayer list for a while, and that makes me feel good about helping them and the potential for upliftment. Okay, connection. There is a writer called Johann Hari who writes about depression, and he really researched it. He did a really good book. I believe it was called The Lost Connections. It's in my references at the end. And he says, an isolated human is like a bee without a hive. We were meant to live with other people that we knew very well and were very important to us. So in the old-fashioned world that people lived in up until the last 200 years, you always were with your people. You spent the whole day with your family or other people that you knew very well. And it's only in the last couple hundred years that people have gone, as a routine, people go away from the family and they're spending time with people that they don't really have any connection with. So in the workplace, at the hospital, you're surrounded by people who don't really know you and just see you as whatever your immediate face value appears to be. When you're with your family, they know you. And you may say, well, today I'm this, or tomorrow I'm going to be that. But your family has this long-term view of you. And sometimes that's a negative because you say, I don't want to be who I used to be. I'm somebody new today. But also, when you have people that care about you, if you're going on a direction that isn't for your benefit, they will help pull you back towards the right direction as well. So just being connected with other people is very important for our general sense of well-being. Belonging to a group is important. If you find someone has been ejected from the group, they will almost always have a great sense of being bereft. In the old limbic system of the brain, when you lose someone or you're ejected from a group, you feel like you're going to die or like you might as well die, because that's just kind of how our emotional system is wired. A lot of people can go out and feel and be alone and enjoy and enjoy quiet time, alone time. You can get a lot done when nobody's bothering you and that sort of thing. But loneliness is a different thing. It's when you don't have enough connection and you don't feel that sense of, oh, I'm happy to be by myself at this moment, because you don't have enough connection. And this state of loneliness is common in the modern world, and it's uncommon in the primitive world. So one of the things we need to do in this world is to combat loneliness. But if you look at things like church participation and bowling leagues and Rotary Club and Lions Club, all these things that our grandparents participated in, even going and playing cards at your friend's house every Friday night, or, going and having pie at grandma's every Saturday or Sunday afternoon, that people aren't participating in that anymore. One of the things I noticed when I moved the primary focus of my work from Grand Rapids to Holland is that in Holland, it's much more common for people to have all their family around them. Like the elderly couple who has a daughter here and a son here and a daughter there and a son there. That's very common in Holland. In Grand Rapids, not so much, because I feel like there are more transplants and more people who came from somewhere else. And I feel like it's very, very supportive to have that family contact all around you. And if we are far from our family, which a lot of us are, the question is, how can we create that feeling of having people who care about us when we are actually far away from our family? I don't think the workplace can really substitute for a family, because like if you work for a hospital, you may feel connected to your coworkers, but at any time, one of those coworkers can be fired or you could lose your job. And so then you don't have, all of a sudden, you don't have that connection. So if you want to promote happiness in yourself, it's good if you can be part of something, join a church choir, join a church, join a yoga class, almost anything where you have people who notice when you're there or when you're not. So you increase your sense of belonging. And this is very important for patients with depression. If you have a patient with depression, you often find a person who's also lonely, or who has a sense of there's nobody who sees me, who really gets me, or who appreciates me. Have you heard of random acts of kindness? Random acts of kindness, it's kind of a trendy term, but basically people have known for a long time that volunteering and giving help to others makes you feel better. If you can't figure out what you have to give and don't have time to volunteer, you could try giving kind words to others. That's the easiest thing to give. For example, John Mulder is an amazing human being who is an anchor for the palliative care community, and I really appreciate him. And I tried to tell him that every once in a while, but
I think this lecture's about done then.
yeah, it's like that pretty much sums it up. But I mean, if you have a sense that you would like to help others, but you're not quite sure in what way to help others, the simplest way is to express a true feeling of what you appreciate to the people who do things for you. For example, who cleans this room, and do they do a good job? And specifically, instead of saying, hey, you're cool, you're awesome, to say, thank you for keeping our space beautiful. It looks wonderful every time I come in here. There are many people around you who are doing things for you, and giving them some attention is actually good for you as well as being good for them. The nurses, the aides, the person at the desk at the hospital, the person that you work with closely, all those people have their ups and downs, and you don't know what they're struggling with today. So if you have a moment to give them a positive word, people appreciate that, and you're contributing to the kindness of your surroundings. So they say, be the change you want to see in the world. Showing a little extra kindness when you have a chance is something that lives up to that idea. All right, so another thing that we all should do at some point is to work with our creativity. So what are your creative outlets? How do you encourage people to work on mastering something like, I know John plays guitar. I like to write poetry, bad poetry mainly. What are your creative outlets? Let's see, Ryan, do you have a creative outlet?
Yeah, I play cello.
Play cello? Do you actually play, or do you practice weekly?
wish it was that often.
So that's the thing, it's easy to let that stuff lapse. But I feel like it uses using a different part of your brain, and also a different part of your spirit when you increase your creative output. Not that many people continue to be creative after childhood. It's easy to be creative when you're a kid and you're in school and they're always asking you for art projects and things like that. But as you get older, being creative is very joyful. Like if you've ever gone to one of those dinners where or not dinners, those evening events where they have you painting a picture and drinking wine. I mean, everybody has such a great time, and even though their picture may look not that great, they just enjoy it so much. So if you can encourage people to have some creative output, I think that's a really nice thing. I was wondering if you guys would like to write a poem with me, but since we only have 3.
We've got others on the call, but it's kind of difficult to do that as a.
It's difficult to do it on Zoom. Yeah. Okay, so here, is anybody feeling brave? Here's a poem, a prompt. At the hospital today, blah, 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 blah. Looking down the hall, I find blah, 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 blah. As I walk back home tonight, blah, 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 blah. So can anybody give me a line for at the hospital today? I'm not asking you for the whole poem, just one line.
And can I it does not need to maintain the same rhythm?
No, it doesn't have to be
Or
the
rhyme.
same rhythm or rhyme. We're not gonna judge it.
Right.
In fact, you can splat up against the wall with the rhythm if you want to. So let's try. At the hospital today. I might have to ask you, John, because you're the only one who's brave.
Well, I would encourage someone to just unmute and throw out a phrase that was, something they might have already done at the hospital today or something they are going to do at the hospital today. And if you feel less bold about unmuting, put something in the chat box.
Oh my.
I will see people who live.
At the hospital today, I will see people who live, okay? Looking down the hall, I find. Anything that rhymes with live?
Many people who serve and give.
Many people serve and give. Okay, let's try that. At the hospital today, I will see people who live. Looking down the hall, I find many people serve and give. As I walk back home tonight, seems like we need 2 more lines. As I walk back home tonight, blah, 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 blah. Da, 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 da. Anybody got one for as I walk back home tonight? It's hard to get audience participation in a Zoom.
I find calm.
In the fading light. Oh, that's
beautiful.
lovely. I like it. Now
Beautiful.
that sounds like a good ending.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got, as at the hospital today, I see people who live. Looking down the hall, I find.
Those who serve and give.
Though I see those who serve and give. As I walk back home tonight,
I find calm.
I find calm in the fading light. Okay, there you go. We did a group poem. Now, that is like a minimal output of creativity, and it was a group thing, so it was kind of shared. But you can see that there's something fun about it. And when you engage your creativity, you're going to enjoy it. And I know you probably think, I don't have time for that. Well, maybe you don't, but a lot of things can be creative. Cooking can be creative. Decorating your home can be creative. A lot of things can be creative if you put the effort into making them if you adjust them based on creative ideas. Okay, managing stress techniques, continuing. So we're trying to balance that overactive sympathetic nervous system. We're trying to slow the heart rate. We're trying to slow the respiratory rate. We're improving digestion. All the diseases that have a stress component can benefit from stress reduction efforts. Andrew Weil would say in his chart, autonomic nervous system imbalance for people with excessive anxiety or other stress-related illness. And then he would recommend meditation to his patients. There are cost-effective, easy tools for stress management, such as meditation, yoga, EFT tapping, breathwork techniques, and bodywork techniques. Meditation. Meditation in general reduces stress and anxiety, reduces heart disease and hypertension, reduces substance abuse, reduces PTSD symptoms, and reduces depression. I would like to try a short breathing exercise today with the participants who are willing to try it. Can any of you tell me, what's your stress level right now? Are you thinking about a million things you need to do? Do you have a stress level reading? Give me a 1 to 10. Can anybody say their stress is less than 5 or greater than 5? John, you look like your stress is low.
Less than 5.
Less than 5?
My stress is low.
Ryan, looks like an 8.
Yeah, I'd say maybe like 6 or 7.
6 or 7? Okay. So let's try a breathing exercise. And this is something you can easily teach people in your practice. Okay, so let's try breathing in to the count of 3, then kind of holding. You don't necessarily have to close your gloves, but holding for the count of 3, breathing out for the count of 3, and then holding at the exhale for the count of 3. So let's try this. Okay, in, hold, 3, out, hold, 2, 3, in, 1, 2, 3, hold, 1, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, in, hold, out, 2, 3, hold, in, 1, 2, 3, hold, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, hold, in, 2, 3, hold, 1, 2, 3, out. Okay, now breathe normally. Now, think about how stressed you feel right now. Do you feel like that reduced your stress level a little bit? I see a couple nodding.
Mhm.
So that brings me back to the palliative care doctor who said he takes some deep breaths before he goes into a patient room. Just taking deep breaths, slowing your breathing a little bit, does help you kind of de-stress. And if we could remember to do that, maybe when we're watching the little computer screen go round and round in small circles, or when we close the computer and stand up, take a deep breath. Just building things into your day to take advantage of your body's ability to calm itself is a good idea, I think. There's a kind of meditation called loving kindness meditation, and I would like to recommend this for people. You say repeated affirmative statements like, may I be happy today, may I be safe, may I be healthy, peaceful, and strong, may I feel loving kindness today. And if you sit with this, you begin to feel a kind of positive feeling. And then if you can add people that you care about, may my partner be happy today, may they be safe, may they be healthy, may they feel loving kindness. And perhaps your kids, once you've branched out into a couple people, you might even feel like, including your boss or somebody that you don't normally feel that positive towards.
Okay.
And this is a good practice. It's something that's recommended, has been recommended by Buddhists over the years. And it does actually help you in a short time feel more positive, and it kind of makes you feel like you're in a more supportive environment. And it also may affect your interaction with the people that you've included in your meditation. Going out in nature is a good way to stack activities and movements with other things that help you meet your goals. You may have a goal of being active. If you can be active out in nature, that improves the positive effect on your mood compared to running on a treadmill in your basement. People who have been prescribed walks in the woods in a beautiful natural setting compared to people who have been prescribed walking in a downtown street scene, they actually had a more positive effect on mood when you walked in the woods. So being outdoors, being with nature, gardening, hiking, biking, going on trails. Here's me on the right, stacking gardening with hanging out with my dog. This is my gardening helper. Kind of looks like a troll there, but those are fruits and vegetables that luckily he does not want to eat. But when you can stack being outdoors with activity, you can help find ways to fit things into your life. And of course, these outdoor garden outputs increase my interest in eating healthy vegetables and fruits as well. So making positive changes in your life can be kind of difficult. We don't necessarily have a way of changing things when we're first become adults. But as an adult, you have to learn how, I think, if you don't already know, to make small changes and then turn them into habits. I feel like things are simple, like, for example, eat less, exercise more. That's simple, right? Anybody could tell you that, but it's not necessarily easy. It's hard to figure out ways to get yourself to do things that you think are important to do. You know, if there's a grade and you're gonna, or there's punishment, it's easier to motivate yourself to avoid the bad grade or to avoid punishment. But when we're talking about our own personal development, there's nobody who's going to smack us if we didn't do it. So you have to figure out ways to start small and create habits. It may look difficult to get to where you want to get to, but using modern techniques, you can learn ways to start doing things that you didn't do before. One way to do it is to create 30-day trials. For example, I asked my husband to give up dairy for 30 days because I felt that it was affecting his arthritis complaints. And when he did, well, first of all, he thought it was ridiculous. But when he did try a 30-day trial of giving up dairy, he found out that there was non-dairy cheese, there was non-dairy ice cream, and that he really didn't miss it all that much. There was even almond milk, which he liked pretty well in his cereal. And his arthritis pain, amazingly, got at like 80% better. So a 30-day trial turned into a continuing action plan of giving up dairy. So sometimes things just need to be tried and then you see how helpful they are and then you can continue them. Sometimes it's something like I'm going to start running. You need to start really small. You know, maybe I'll just put my running shoes on and run around inside the house for today. So yeah, there are ways to get yourself to do things, but you have to negotiate with yourself, and that isn't always something people are used to doing. So if you use your motivational skills with patients and you can find out things that they are willing to start with, for example, if they're working on quitting smoking, you might have to start with education about why quitting smoking is important. But there should be a lot of opportunities for even in hospice and palliative care for mentioning things that would be worth doing for our patients. For example, there may be some estranged family members that somebody could notify about the patient's condition. Maybe the patient doesn't feel like calling up their estranged son, but maybe the daughter could call the estranged son and let them know that father doesn't have that much time left, and that it might be really beneficial to try to make amends. So just small things that would improve people's quality of life sometimes are within our ability to influence. And so anything that helps make people happier, I think is worth considering as part of our job description. Toothbrushing, I like this as an example. Toothbrushing was originally way back with twigs. People tried brushing their teeth with sticks and all kinds of things. Back in 1780, a guy named Thomas Addis created a toothbrush with boar bristles attached into a sheep tibia. That sounds horrible to me. But eventually they recommended twice a day brushing, but nobody really did it until in America after World War II, when the returning GIs continued the practice they had begun during military service. So a habit, once established, can actually spread. And so now everybody brushes their teeth twice a day, pretty much, or else you're really letting yourself go. But people didn't do it before. They didn't know about it and they didn't realize. And so I think a lot of things are like that. And for us in the modern world, it might mean that exercising and meditation and certain other practices are going to have to become conscious habits because of the way our modern society has changed. These things don't take care of themselves anymore. And maybe in the ancient world, brushing your teeth wasn't even necessary because of the amount of fiber that people ate. Like if you bite into an apple compared to eating applesauce, you're definitely cleaning your teeth just biting into an apple. So I feel like a lot of the things that we need to do in the modern world might be because of the changes that have been put in place, and that applies. So take heart. No matter what's wrong with you, there's more right than wrong. If you're alive, there's something to work with. That's a statement from John Kabat-Zinn, who is a mindfulness guru who has several really nice mind-body meditations recorded that are available online. John Kabat-Zinn, pain, alienation, and exhaustion are potentially fixable. I'm not saying that if you're working in a horrible system that's abusive, that going out and doing yoga will be the answer to that. You may need to move to a different system or change the system you're in, but your own internal world can be affected by what you do. And there's a whole world of happiness and inner capacity that's waiting for you and for your patients to experience. I think that's all. I've got some recommended reading. Nutritionfacts.org, it's kind of a consumer reports of healthy diet. The Lost Connections was a really great book about depression. Just a couple basic things about lifestyle changes that can be made. Atomic Habits is a good one for how to start doing habits that you intentionally want to do. Katie Bauman is a good author who talks about how to increase movement in your life. So the basic idea here is that we have control over our own internal world to a greater degree than we realize. And I hope that we'll all be motivated to do those basic things that are needed to move us towards a happier internal mindset.
Well, thanks, Alice. This has been really insightful and really appreciate it. I think it's important. And I hope people will take it to heart, not only for how they can help their patients, but for themselves personally. It's really important. This lecture, along with all of our lectures, will be archived in our HPM Fellowship a dedicated YouTube channel, and that link is in the invitation that you received for the lecture today. And I would encourage you to access those and to share them. Those are publicly available, and this is really important for these reminders. I just wanted to ask one question, Alice, because, and then we'll open up for everyone else who might have questions as well, or comments. Way back in the day, when I was first studying meditation in the context of my primary care practice. This goes back 30 some years. And, you know, thinking about yoga and other sorts of practices like that, I would get pushback from patients who would claim that because of their religious traditions, those were incompatible. And I never saw that as such. I saw that there was a lot of resonance with people who had an active prayer life and could meditate also, who were involved in, and even though yoga has its roots in some element of Indian and Eastern types of philosophy, that it was not, you know, it was not antithetical to religious traditions, Judaism or Christianity or anything else like that. And I just, I guess it's really not a question, it's just as an affirmation that the people should not be afraid to tiptoe into those waters if they've not been comfortable going there before.
Absolutely, and I feel like meditation has crossed over several boundaries and continue to be adapted by the cultures that assimilate it. And I think that each culture that has adopted meditation has put a slightly different spin on it. And the same with yoga. You'll find that martial arts and yoga kind of overlap, and that each different culture has their own take on it.
Okay.
And I feel like we can too.
Sure. So what questions do folks have for Alice?
I don't think they have any questions. Nobody's spoken up.
And I don't see, let me see if I don't see anything in the chat.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Oh, hi. So this is John. Thank you so much for this great lecture. I saw there's a genetic component for happiness. And is there like study done in terms of which genes are affecting happiness and stuff?
I don't think so. I think that this is population level studies showing that people's general sense of happiness reflects that of their parents. Like say twin studies or adoption studies, that they're more reflective of their biological parents than they are of their adopted parents. But I don't think that they have figured out which genes are the ones responsible for that. I haven't seen any of that.
Thank you.
There are a lot of studies, though, showing that an individual person who is unhappy will tend to live a shorter life. They even looked at, say, diaries of nuns from 1950, and then they found out how long they lived. And the nuns who were in the unhappiest quartile and the happiest quartile, there was like a 15-year difference in the average lifespan. The unhappiest ones died much earlier. And the same thing's been done with rookie baseball cards. The rookie baseball cards where the person had a big smile versus a partial smile versus no smile, the difference in lifespan, in their eventual death was like age 73, age 75, and age 80. And so they attribute that to their just general lack of happiness or happiness. And that, so it does make a difference, I think, even if we don't know exactly how.
Interesting. All right, I think that we're at the bottom of the hour and we can go ahead and thank those of you who have attended. And if you're going to stick around for the case presentation, we'll go ahead and transition that to Dr. Ortiz and 13.